How would you like a 15% discount to my daily email, the stack of stuff, the show notes, discounts to the conference, all of that? All you need to do is text the word show to 33777. You'll get the annual subscription with a 15% discount to my daily email. You'll get the stack of stuff, the links to the show notes, discounts to the conference, and so much more. All you have to do is text the word show, SHOW, to 33777. Text show to 33777.
Welcome to the Eric Erickson Show podcast, Hour 3.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, it is Eric Erickson here across the United States of America. Glad to have you with me. Remember, there may be an election where you are today, and it would behoove you to get out and vote. The radical left is, well, all over the country trying to take up slots in the country, which is not a good thing at all. Now, while all of this election stuff is happening around the country right now, there's lots of other stuff happening too. And one of those things is Mike Pence has a new book out, and it's about, well, what it means to be a conservative in America today. And he happens to be joining me by phone. Vice President Pence, how are you?
Eric Erickson, I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on the show.
Okay, so first of all, congratulations on the new grandkid. Christmas is going to be expensive at your house the way things are going.
Thank you. Yeah, our Marine and his wonderful wife just gave us our third grandchild in that family, our fifth overall. And, Karen and I learned 4 years ago that the reason we had kids was to have grandkids. And we couldn't be. People see me sometimes. They say, "I hope you're doing well." I said, "Look, I'm blessed in every way that matters. My wife loves me. Our kids are all thriving. Two of them are in the serving in the uniform of the United States with their families, and these 5 grandkids are the joy of our life."
Well, before we get into your book, I would be remiss if I didn't get your thoughts on the passing of your predecessor in office, Dick Cheney. I know you knew him. I did too, and always thought he was a very likable, nice guy.
Well, I would tell you, Karen and I marked the news this morning of the passing of Vice President Dick Cheney with genuine sadness, and our prayers are with Lynn and the entire Cheney family. Dick Cheney was an extraordinary American patriot who began his career in Congress and then would go on to serve alongside 3 presidents. It's remarkable to think of a career that took him from being Gerald Ford's chief of staff, George Herbert Walker Bush's Secretary of Defense, and then, of course, Vice President of the United States during 8 consequential years. And through it all, I came to know him, and he was a great encouragement to me when I was in Congress, when he was in office. And also, he was, frankly, a great encouragement to me during my years as vice president. And he will be missed. But I know America will always honor the memory and the legacy, the devotion to our armed forces, and to our national security represented in the life and service of Dick Cheney.
That's well said. Now, you've got your new book out. And folks, if you want to order the book, it's What Conservatives Believe, Rediscovering the Conservative Conscience. You can text the word ENGAGE to 33777, and I'll send you back the link to Amazon to be able to order the Vice President's book. So 1960, Barry Goldwater writes, or L. Brent Bozell does, Conscience of a Conservative. I think Goldwater might have actually read it. And here comes the former Vice President now with What Conservatives Believe, Rediscovering the Conservative Conscience. At this point, I don't know. I'm kind of scratching my head, particularly after this past week. What do conservatives believe these days?
Well, I think good conservatives know what we believe. It's a belief in a strong national defense, American leadership in the free world. It's a commitment to limited government, fiscal responsibility, free market economics, traditional values, and the sanctity of life. And it was those values that drew me to the Republican Party. You know, some people that know me well know I actually started as a teenager as a a Democrat Party activist in my hometown. But when I started to listen to the values and the voice of Ronald Reagan, I joined the Reagan Revolution, never looked back. My years in talk radio, never as big a deal as the Eric Erickson show, but we were on stations across the state of Indiana. It was a formative time for me, but it was my calling in Congress and as a governor and as vice president was always to those core principles. And I think those are the principles that defined our party over the last 50 years, all the way through the Trump-Pence administration. I want to say emphatically, I'm incredibly proud of the record of the Trump-Pence administration. We rebuilt our military. We led on the world stage. We cut taxes. We promoted free market economics. It was the most pro-life administration in history. But the reason I wrote What Conservatives Believe was because right now, while I think President Trump is off to a strong start. I commend him for having secured our southern border from the worst crisis in history. I commend him for extending all those Trump-Pence tax cuts, and, of course, his courageous decision to use American military forces to strike Iran and set the table for a peace deal in the Middle East. Beyond that, there are forces in and around the administration and within the administration that are going in a different direction, Eric. You've talked about it probably more eloquently than anybody on the airwaves of the country. But where we have a tradition of leading the free world, there are voices around this administration advancing a more isolationist view, including, as we've heard in the last week, even with regard to our cherished ally Israel, where we promoted less taxes and less regulation. This administration has, of course, announced broad-based unilateral tariffs, which are taxes at our borders on friend and foe alike, has advocated state ownership of business and price controls. And then probably most poignantly to me is that where we championed the right to life throughout those past 50 years, saw the overturning of Roe versus Wade because of the justices that President Trump appointed to the Supreme Court. Now there are voices in and around the administration that would marginalize the right to life and even supported confirming a pro-abortion Democrat to lead the Department of Health and Human Services in RFK Jr. And so for me, this is an opportune time for us. And this book will come out about the midway point in this administration, midway point of the midterm elections, to really reflect on what conservatives believe. And my hope is that it's received in some spirit as an echo of that famous book by Barry Goldwater, The Conscience of the Conservative.
What do you make of these arguments we've had in the past week on the rise of anti-Semitism and Kevin Roberts' damage control effort, and now apparently there's someone in a conservative group urging that no one who spoke out against Nazis be hired by Republican members of Congress. It seems like something got out of a bottle here, and we're at least on our side, we're arguing about it and pushing back on it, unlike the left. But it's still kind of disturbing to see this level of hostility now towards Israel crop up on the right.
Well, first, let me stipulate your first point. I meing, we've seen rank anti-Semitism expressed on the floor of the House of Representatives by the progressive left.
Right.
We literally have. I've seen a rising tide of anti-Israel sentiment over the last 15 years in the Democratic Party, and that's one of the reasons why I'm very concerned about what I think is a distinct minority in our coalition that is beginning to embrace some of these tired arguments, challenging U.S. support for Israel, or even engaging in or tolerating or platforming outright anti-Semitic rhetoric. I said when I spoke before the Knesset back shortly after we had moved the American embassy to Jerusalem, and I was vice president in the most pro-Israel administration in American history. I said, if the world knows nothing else, the world must know this: America stands with Israel. And I have a chapter in my book, What Conservatives Believe, entitled "The Case for Israel." And part of it is, Eric, I just think it's time for us to reboot, to do what you do so brilliantly on the airwaves every day, and just go back to founding principles and go back to kind of the founding ideals and aspirations of the American people. And I would say, as a closing thought on this, there's probably no aspiration apart from freedom that has been in the hearts of the American people for the last 250 years than the desire to see the people of Israel return to their homeland of Israel. You can find sermons at little churches in 1776 championing and hoping for the day that the people of Israel would be restored to the land of Israel. And when America became the first nation on earth to recognize the Jewish state of Israel in 1948, that dream became a reality. And standing with Israel has great strategic significance to America, great economic and diplomatic significance. But at the end of the day, I really do believe that the love for the people of Israel and the love for a strong and unwavering relationship, it emanates out of the heart of conservative, and so it must always do.
So I don't know how I can phrase this, and just this, I mean, everything I do is kind of off the top of my head, but what would you rather be talking about? Because you've done several interviews, and the anti-Semitism issue keeps coming up. A lot of other issues where it seems like conservatism is on defense against populism and stuff. I mean, what's the conversation you wish we were having right now?
Well, look, to me, it's just a matter of I don't know. We just finished the World Series, which I watched a few of the games.
Oh my gosh, was that not incredible?
Oh, it's incredible. But it what do they call it? The brushback in baseball, right? I mean, to me, I believe that this rank anti-Semitism that has reared its head by that one character that was recently platformed on Tucker Carlson's show, or Tucker's kind of persistent questioning of U.S. support for Israel. I brush that back because I just don't believe it's anywhere near the heart and soul of American conservatives, the tens of millions of people that listen to your radio show, the people that cherish our movement over these years, stand where President Trump and I stood, and that is unwaveringly with the people of Israel. I really do commend the president for the way that, in the wake of October 7th, he took to heart that principle and stood through these years of war in Israel, never wavering, never abandoning. Biden was always trying to play both sides. President Trump stood firm with Israel, and I think that expresses where the people in our movement, the overwhelming majority of the American people, stand. But I hope that when the book comes out, we can talk about the issues, not just the choice between the progressive left and Republican governance, both in the midterms and going forward, but also what I observed a couple of years ago when I was running for president in 2023, and that is that it wasn't just a choice between left and right, but within the American right, the voters had to make a choice whether we were going to continue to stand on the foundation of the conservative ideals and values that had defined our party and our movement for 50 years, or whether we would, as I say, follow the siren song of populism unmoored to conservative principles. And I've only grown in my concern, for the reasons I just stated a moment ago, over the last 2 years. And I think this is going to be a very important debate. I hope to be a part of that debate. I hope my little book is a part of that debate, that we can really sort out what our party needs to be. Because I believe, as I think you do, Eric, that America needs a conservative party, not just because we think it's a way to win elections, but standing on the principles of limited government, a strong national defense, the right to life, traditional values, and family. These are things that about which the destiny of the country is tied up in. I mean, you look at the incredible prosperity and success that flowed from the Reagan administration through the first Trump administration. It was because of leadership, but it was also because we stood on this broad mainstream conservative agenda. America prospered. America was more secure. And I think having a debate over whether our party is going to be the vanguard of those traditional conservative values is a debate whose time will soon come.
Well, listen, I thank you for stopping by. Folks, if you text ENGAGE to 33777, you can get a link to pre-order Mike Pence's What Conservatives Believe. Mr. Vice President, it's always great to talk to you. My best to your family.
Eric, thanks for having me on the best talk radio show in America, the Eric Erickson Show.
Thank you very much. Mike Pence, former Vice President of the United States. The book comes out actually in time for the midterms. You can pre-order it by texting ENGAGE to 33777. What Conservatives Believe, rediscovering the conscience, the conservative conscience. In business, they say you can have better, cheaper, or faster, but you can only pick two. What if you could have all three at the same time? That's exactly what Cohere, Thomson Reuters, and Specialized Bikes have since they've upgraded to the next generation of the cloud. Oracle Cloud Infrastructure. OCI is the blazing fast platform for your infrastructure, database, application development, and AI needs, where you can run any workload in a high availability, consistently high performance environment and spend less than you would with other clouds. How's it faster? OCI's block storage gives you more operations per second. Cheaper? OCI costs up to 50% less for compute, 70% less for storage, and 80% less for networking. Better? In test after test, OCI customers report lower latency and higher bandwidth versus other clouds. This is the cloud built for AI and for all your biggest workloads. Right now, with zero commitment, try OCI for free. Head to oracle.com/Erickson, ERICKSON. That's oracle.com/Erickson. Hello there. Welcome. It is Eric Erickson here. The phone number, 877-973-7425. If you want to win the program, thanks to Mike Pence and to Megyn Kelly for being on the show today. We hardly ever have people on, and here lately we've had several on. I think we got somebody on next week, but not the norm. Why? Because this actually has come up when I do live events. And by the way, we will be doing another Not Safe for Radio show. We're thinking of going to Kansas City and going to Oklahoma as well and doing them in those spots and a few others. But, we've done a lot of research. We've talked to a lot of you. Turns out it's you guys who don't like me to do interviews. Y'all want to be in conversation with me, yelling at me on the radio. And it's hard to yell at me on the radio when I'm talking to somebody other than you. So we limit it. And I kind of like it, too. I like it being me and you guys. We got a phone number. You can call in. 877-973-7425. You got to get past the call screener. But I kind of like the relationship we have, which is also why we'll do a few more of these Not Safe for Radio shows. We're looking forward to doing them around the country. Now, we got to move on to other stuff. I want to mention just real quick here. I continue to see people on social media say Curtis Sliwa in New York is going to be the most hated man in America if Mamdani wins. But I'm sorry, Andrew Cuomo killed people's grandmothers, then sexually harassed their granddaughters, and instead of trying to make a case for Sliwa's voters to vote for Cuomo, decided to try to bully Sliwa out of the race. That's not a recipe for winning, and that's not Curtis Sliwa's fault, so don't blame him if Mamdani wins. Blame Andrew Cuomo. Now, let me tell you about Americans for Prosperity. Around the country, AFP does fantastic events. You can go to AFPvolunteer.com and you can sign up to be a part of them. They engage in coalition building. They engage in advocacy for conservative principles. They engage in local, state, and federal government advocacy for common sense conservative reforms. They're the nation's largest leading grassroots group in the nation. They would love to have you engage with them. They would love to have you on their side. Go to AFPvolunteer.com today, AFPvolunteer.com. Sign up with Americans for Prosperity today. Get involved in the political process in the United States, or just become the most informed person in your circle of friends, and they'll help you out. When we come back, the fight over the nation's airspace is expanding. Sean Duffy, the Secretary of Transportation, saying they may start grounding more flights over the government shutdown as pressure builds. Have you heard about Cove Pure? You may have one of those water pitchers you put in your refrigerator. Well, you can get the Cove Pure, put it on your countertop, and you get hot water, cold water. It's all really good filtered water. You can pull the pitcher out of it and pour, or you can put a cup under it, and it's got the buttons for like a 6-ounce, an 8-ounce, or a 16-ounce glass. You push it, you say, I want it hot, I want it cold. It fills up the glass exactly the way you want it. Even a custom option if you've got a 20-ounce glass or big Yeti tumbler, whatever you need. It just works, and the water is great. Uses reverse osmosis, among other things. I've been drinking way more water since I got one of these on my countertop in the office. If you're looking for a gift that's good for a loved one they'll actually use, get them the Cove Pure. I partnered with them. They'll give you a special $250 holiday discount. Go to covepure.com/Eric. That's COVE, Cove, Pure, PURE.com/Eric, ERICK. $250 off, covepure.com/Eric. The sale's going to end, so you better hurry up. Hello there. Welcome. It is Eric Erickson here across the United States, 877-973-7425. Should you wish to be on the program, Sean Duffy, the Secretary of Transportation, is warning that starting next week, American airspace may start closing down due to the reduction in funds for air traffic control, among other things. It's going to be interesting to see how this plays out. Now, this comes as there's a growing belief within the United States Senate from certain members on the left and the right that, in fact, they're going to be able to get the shutdown shut down. This is from the Wall Street Journal. Senators said they're increasingly optimistic they could reach a bipartisan deal to end the government shutdown, while President Trump raised pressure on Republicans to bypass Democrats and end the near record-setting impasse without their votes. Senate Majority Leader John Thune on Tuesday outlined a pathway forward, pointing to the possibility of combining a new short-term bill to reopen the government with some of the 12 annual appropriation bills that fund federal agencies. He said that the off-ramp was focused on giving Democrats a vote on an extension of expiring Affordable Care Act subsidies, along with plans for the spending bills. I've said this before, but the question is whether or not they'll take yes for the answer, Thune said. Several lawmakers said they thought the shutdown would come to a close by the end of the weekend if talks progressed. I think we got a real shot, says Senator John Hoeven of North Dakota. We're continuing to talk, says Senator Gary Peters. We're in a sensitive time right now. Some Democrats were drawing hard lines. Ruben Galeo of Arizona says he couldn't vote to fund the government with only the promise of a future vote on extending the expiring subsidies. I don't trust them, he said. A show vote, I just don't trust that they're going to do it. He noted that even if the Senate made a deal, the measure also would have to go through the House. Essentially, Galeo's view is you must give me this legislation or I will not vote to open the government. Now, here's the thing. You will notice there are many more Republicans talking than there are Democrats talking. And the president himself wants an end to the filibuster. And everybody always seems to want an end to the filibuster, which I think is really a very foolish thing to do. There's no reason to end the filibuster. Now, I want to talk about that for a minute. What the Republicans could do is they could force the Democrats to do a real filibuster. That is, everybody comes in and no one's allowed to leave. The rules of the filibuster are very simple. Every member of the Senate gets an opportunity to speak on an issue. And it takes 60 votes in the Senate to stop debate. That's the filibuster. So every member of the Senate gets to speak once on an issue, and when they get the floor, they can speak as long as they want. So long as they're not leaning on a table, they're standing, and they can be asked questions. So what typically happens in a filibuster is someone stands and begins to speak, and when their voice gets a little tired, a member of their party stands up and says, "Would the senator yield for a question?" And that person gives a very long-winded speech that ends in a question mark. And then it goes back, the person's voice is recovered, and they get to speak. And you do that. And it can go on for a very long time. And you're wondering, why haven't the Republicans done this? There are two reasons. Because I get this email all the time from people. In fact, I've gotten it from two different people today. Why don't they just do a real filibuster? Force the Democrats to do a real filibuster. Couple of reasons. Number one, the burden is actually on the majority party. The party that is in the majority, everybody's got to be present. And the minority party can suggest the absence of a quorum. And that gives them a break. So what is the absence of a quorum? You've probably seen, if you watch C-SPAN, you've seen this. If you've been engaged in debates, you say, Mr. President, the President of the Senate is the Vice President, Mr. President, I suggest the absence of a quorum, and then you got to do a roll call vote. Is everybody present? And you got to make sure everybody's present. You got to make sure majority's present to do business. And that gives the speaker a little bit of a break while they're doing the quorum call, and then it goes back to him. And you can then, once that person exhausted, you go to the next Democrat, and then the next Democrat. There are 48 Democrats, really probably 45. The others wouldn't participate, and it could go on a long time. It could go on for days. It could go on for weeks. Mr. Smith goes to Washington sort of thing. And then once they've all spoken, then you can have the vote. Now, sure enough, had they started October 1st and the Republicans forced them to do the real filibuster, it'd be over by now, more likely than not. I don't know if you're aware of this, though, but over the past 34 days, 35 days, the Republicans have confirmed a large number of Donald Trump's judges. There have been more than a dozen judges confirmed since the government shutdown. If you did a real filibuster, you couldn't do all the executive calendar stuff. See, the Senate is divided between an executive calendar and a legislative calendar. The executive calendar is appointments. The legislative calendar is legislation. And while the filibuster is happening in the way they're doing it, where they're just bringing up the legislation, asking for a vote constantly, they can do all sorts of other business. They can do executive business. They can't do other legislative business, but they can do executive business. So they can confirm judges. They can confirm cabinet secretaries, undersecretaries, deputy undersecretaries. They can do all the confirmations for the executive branch. And so they're doing that during the shutdown. If they did a real filibuster where someone's on the floor of the Senate talking the whole time, they wouldn't be able to do the executive calendar. And the pattern and practice over the last decades has been just keep bringing stuff up for a vote, and eventually it's going to get voted on or not. But what I personally believe is they should go back to the real filibuster. The reason I believe that is because both parties have signaled over the last decade that the filibuster is now a weapon. And both sides use it to shut down the government, to leverage power to get something. And I think what the Republicans should do is force the real filibuster at this point. And the Democrats are going to have to make a go of it. It's easy for the Democrats to just show up and not vote to open the government. Forcing them to speak. The media may play up the sound bites. The left may play up the sound bites. It gives them the look of a fight, but eventually you come to an end. My suspicion is that the shutdown would be over now had they forced a real filibuster. And my suspicion is if they choose not to force real filibusters moving forward, what's going to happen is the greater and greater weaponization of the filibuster, with both sides using the filibuster to shut down the government when they don't get their way. And the better way of dealing with it, instead of getting rid of the filibuster like the president wants, is to get rid of the practice of just objecting and make them actually talk. Senator Chris Van Hollen, Wall Street Journal says of Maryland, who represents a large number of federal workers, says Trump claims to be a great negotiator. What's he afraid of? The longest shutdown began in late 2018 during Trump's first term and lasted 35 days, though only a portion of federal agencies were affected by the funding freeze because some of the 12 annual funding bills had been signed into law. Trump doubled down Tuesday on his demand Republicans bypass Democrats by killing the filibuster. It will be impossible for Republicans to get common sense policies done with these crazed Democratic lunatics being able to block everything by withholding their votes, he said in a social media post. Trump and his surrogates plan to make a robust public case for ending the filibuster and will move to pushing senators behind the scenes to eliminate it if the shutdown persists beyond the next week or so, according to a senior administration official. Everybody knows the president's position, said Thune, who's opposed eliminating the filibuster. The practical reality is the votes aren't there. Some Republicans agree with Trump's frustrations. A couple weeks ago, I was definitely against getting rid of the filibuster, but now here we are, 2 weeks later, we're still in the shutdown. Drastic times call for drastic measures, says Roger Marshall of Kansas, who's a fool for saying that. The filibuster will protect the Republicans, and some of you will easily be duped into stupid thinking of, well, when the Democrats take the majority, they'll get rid of the filibuster. We might as well do it. It's the siren song of the dumb butt, because I can't say the other word on air. If you have bought into the siren song of the dumb ASS, that we should just get rid of the filibuster because the Democrats are going to do it anyway, you actually are an ignoramus. The Democrats are doing what they're doing, hoping the Republicans get rid of the filibuster because they don't have the votes. The Democrats tried the last time they controlled the Senate, and they didn't have the votes to get rid of the filibuster. The Democrats don't have the votes to get rid of the filibuster. Why? Because historically, due to population shifts in this country, there is greater precedent for Republicans to control the Senate than the Democrats to control the Senate. And so even when the Democrats control the Senate, they understand that there's actually a greater odds of Republicans taking back the Senate. And so they want to preserve the filibuster to protect their right to block legislation they don't like. They don't want to get rid of the filibuster. But Republicans do occasionally get into the minority, and they themselves should protect themselves from when Democrats are in charge. You get rid of the filibuster, the Senate just becomes a glorified House of Representatives. It's a bad idea to get rid of the filibuster. The president should keep his mouth shut on this. Now, I know what he's actually doing is he's just trying to build pressure on the Democrats, making them think the Senate might get rid of the filibuster, but it's not actually helpful. And you actually will get Republicans convinced we should get rid of the filibuster because they're going to get rid of it anyway, which absolutely is not true because they've tried to do it and didn't have the votes to do it. And that's not going to change. Remember what actually happened is that Kyrsten Sinema and Joe Manchin blocked the killing of the filibuster. And it was well known that other Democrats who were voting for getting rid of the filibuster were only doing it because they knew that Sinema and Manchin would stop it from happening. But they needed to look good to avoid primaries from the radical left. So they voted to kill the filibuster, knowing that Sinema and Manchin were going to keep it from being killed. Otherwise, they would have had to stand up and do it. Most members of the Senate do not want to kill the filibuster because they recognize it preserves a unique feature of the Senate that makes it not like the House of Representatives. And the president weighed in on this stuff is just dumb. It's just dumb. And I genuinely think that the best way forward is for the Republican leaders of the Senate not to get rid of the filibuster, but to actually force a real filibuster. And if you force a real filibuster in the Senate, you make both sides understand the consequences. And in making both sides understand the consequences, you make them recognize the filibuster matters, the Senate matters, and also there's an end in sight, as opposed to this situation where they go home and rest comfortably in their bed and then just come to the Senate and vote to keep it closed. There's no real consequence. So make them do real consequential stuff for a shutdown, and you might get the government back open. Hello there. Welcome. Too late to give you the phone number today. I do hope you will text Eric, E-R-I-C-K, to 33777 and get the show notes, the live stream, the podcast, but also the 4 things you need to know in the afternoon, which I will do after the show happens. Because, while we're sitting here talking, news breaks, and I can't get to all of it. And we finally decided, I'm doing you guys a disservice that when the show is done, I should do. It is literally. It's never been more than 8 minutes. It's usually 5 minutes, and it is. Here are the 4 things happening this afternoon that you need to know before you get home from work, and you'll be smarter and more informed than anybody else. Just always 4 things. In the afternoon, we get it out the door before you leave the office, and all you have to do is text ERICK, ERICK, to 33777. You get a series of links back. You get the show notes, the live stream, the podcast. You also get the link to the 4 Things to Know This Afternoon podcast, and it's available on all your favorite podcast apps. You just look for 4 Things to Know. Maybe search my name, Eric Erickson. You'll find the podcast link for 4 Things to Know This Afternoon. It's also been kind of fun for me to be mindful of the fact that while I'm sitting here talking to you guys, how much news is actually breaking out there. Now, there's one you should know. It just hit the wires here that Apple is preparing to enter the low-cost laptop market for the first time. It's going to use iPhone chips instead of their fancy chips they use for their real computers. They're going to use iPhone chips. And they're going to make computers for kids like Chromebooks, which is actually an interesting new market for Apple to be entering because they've tended to avoid the real cheap laptop market. But I guess they're feeling pressure to come up with new things and get into new market. I just finally, when Steve Jobs got back to Apple, he kind of really simplified. You had a laptop and you had a desktop, and now we got we got multiple laptop types, we got multiple desktop types, we got the headset, now we're probably getting glasses, and we got the watches of all varieties. It's just a very complicated product line. Don't forget all the phones. You got the 17, the 16, the SC, the Pro, the Pro Max, whatever. They do terrible jobs of naming stuff. It's just gotten to be a very complicated product line for Apple. I'm not saying they need to be super simple, but it is just kind of like you got the MacBook Air, you got the MacBook, you got the MacBook Pro. Just everything is now you're going to have the cheap Chromebook sort of thing. I don't know. It just seems like maybe they could do something else. By the way, speaking of Apple, I'm a really big fan of their streaming service, and it's the least watched streaming service. Apple, they called it Apple TV Plus, which is always a stupid name. Now it's Apple TV, which is a better name, but it's stupid because they have an Apple TV hardware set, which I suspect they're going to get rid of in favor of a hub sort of device. They're going to rename it at least. But Apple TV, Slow Horses on Apple TV continues to be my favorite show. There are 5 seasons. The 6th season is about to come out. Warning, language. It's a British series. But now the same writer has a new series. It's only 2 episodes that are out so far called Down Cemetery Road with Emma Thompson. And y'all, it's really good so far. These first 2 episodes are really very good. It's the same writer that did Slow Horses. There's still bad language, but it's less than in Slow Horses. But I'm really impressed. Again, kind of dry British humor, but you only have to watch, like with Slow Horses, they actually did it by design. You got to watch the first 3 episodes. If you're not committed to watch the first 3 episodes, you are not going to enjoy the show. If you watch the first 3 episodes of Slow Horses, you're never not going to watch Slow Horses. They kind of figured that out. But with Down Cemetery Road, I watched the first episode and I was hooked. It's a very good and compelling show, and I highly recommend it. It's called Down Cemetery Road on Apple TV. And again, a lot of you probably don't have Apple TV, but they've got the best shows. Their shows are so much better than any of the other streaming platforms. Now, I got to tell you about the Eden Pure Thunderstorm. You can get 3 of them, save $200, get them for less than $200 at EdenPureDeals.com. The discount code is ERICK3, ERICK3 at EdenPureDeals.com. They're fantastic air purifiers, and their odor eliminators. Really, I don't even use it for the air purification purposes, really. I use it for the odor elimination purposes. If I'm in a hotel room or I got a rental car where someone smoked in it, it wipes out smoke odors, diaper odors, frying odors, pet odors, dirty diaper, litter box odors, you name it. It wipes out those odors, and it does such a quality job. And it's small. I can keep it in my travel bag. I can plug it into the wall. I can plug it up with the USB cord. EdenPureDeals.com is the discount code. EdenPureDeals.com is the website. The discount code is ERICK3, ERICK3 at EdenPureDeals.com, and you will just wipe out bad odors and get rid of bacteria, viruses, pet dander, pollen, dust. EdenPureDeals.com, the discount code ERICK3.